Ester itself, as a business, we're an AI-first revenue platform. And really, we deliver three things. We help with what we call AI-guided selling. This is all about helping sales reps understand what they need to do best, what they need to do next, with best next actions. We deliver pipeline insights for managers to help them identify risk in pipeline earlier. And we also deliver an AI-based forecast and do that all inside HubSpot and Salesforce. We have 3 brand guarantees. These are quite new for us. We guarantee to improve your rep quota attainment within 6 months. We guarantee to improve forecast accuracy to within 10%. And we also guarantee to get you live within 30 days. So welcome any feedback on those, because that's the first time I've said that out loud. So I'd love to, last show of hands, I promise. I'd love to understand how many people in the room have downloaded or seen the content from the 2024 benchmark report. Very good. Well, thank you so much for downloading that content. We had over 1,500 companies download that content in the first 6 months of the year. And we also saw hundreds of posts and comments online and on social. And I've had lots of people come up to us and talk to us about how they use that content in their own SKOs, at their board meetings to help justify some of the big decisions that they're having to make. So really enjoy the fact that we can kind of contribute to the community and people are getting a lot of value from this content. Today, what we're going to be doing, part of our agreement with Pavilion is that you guys get the very first opportunity to see the latest data. So this information hasn't been out there in the web yet. We're going to be making it available today. And then we're going to be doing a little bit of a roadshow, a virtual roadshow around all the different communities within Pavilion. And then next month, this information will start getting out there to the wider market. So this is an update on the benchmark report that we launched in January, and it covers the last 6 months worth of data. So people always want to understand where the data's come from or how much data we've covered. And you can see here that the latest update covers data from 4.7 million opportunities, representing over $57 billion worth of pipeline. And this year is the first year where we also analyzed over 1.2 million hours of sales calls, trying to understand what's actually going on in those sales calls and in those discovery meetings. So before we jump into the H1 update data, let's think about a little bit about, cast our minds back as to where we were in January. So what did the numbers look like at the end of last year, beginning of this year? And it didn't paint a pretty picture. We saw at the end of last year, win rates had dropped dramatically, deal values were down, and sales cycles were increasing. And that wasn't the end of it. Over 2/3 of sales reps were missing their quota. The gap between the top and the average performers had grown from 6x to nearly 9x. And deal slippage had grown where nearly half of all deals were slipping past their anticipated close date. So, as we move on to the first half of 2024, and what the state of sales looks like as we move into the second half, unfortunately, the data doesn't look like it's moving in the right direction. I say that with a smile on my face. So, rep velocity is now at 10x, over 10x, between our top and lowest performers across our organization. We're going to dive into these numbers in a lot more detail as we go. We're now seeing that 2/3 of sales reps are missing quota. And deal slippage has actually gone down, but that doesn't tell the whole story. And we're going to jump into it. So when we think about the number of reps that are missing quota, behind that number, what we can see is that win rates have dropped and sales cycles have continued to increase. Now, there is some green shoots. We see that the deal values are starting to increase again. So I think towards the end of last year, we were seeing there was almost a fire sale going on. People were doing anything and everything they could to get the deals over the line. And they were cutting all sorts of crazy deals. And so we think that started to slow down and people are starting to protect their numbers again. But the deal values are creeping up. But when we think about deal slippage, this is a really interesting number here. So when we dive into the numbers, what we can see is that in the first quarter of the year, nearly 10% of our sales teams were culled. So we got rid of those low performers. They weren't performing, they weren't hitting their numbers. We got rid of that bottom 10% in the first quarter. And then in the second quarter, we grew our sales teams again. So we started hiring more salespeople to join the teams that we had. And so you can start to see how that deal slippage number that actually increased in the first quarter, but once we got rid of the lowest performers, we're clearing out their pipeline, we're starting again, and we've got these new reps coming in that aren't necessarily fully ramped yet. And that kind of gives us an understanding a little bit about why the delta between those top and average performers is so wide, because, or top and lower performers is so wide, is because those lowest performers aren't necessarily fully ramped and operational quite yet. Now, there's a positive sign on this graphic. We can see that the pipeline created has grown dramatically, okay? And we can start to see that we've increased our average pipeline by 25%. However, we've heard this story before. Reps are underperforming, we churn them, we hire a load more, we create a load more pipeline, and we assume that the conversion rates we were achieving before, well, we'll get them again. Okay, because we've got all this new pipeline now, we can use that as our safety net. We can all sleep at night, don't worry, I know we missed last year, but it'll be okay, because we've generated all this new pipeline, and we're definitely going to get the same conversion rates, right? I love the optimism. However, sales velocity continues to slow. And at the same time, while last year the quota targets were dropped in the second half of last year quite dramatically, they've increased just as dramatically in the first half of this year. The targets that we've set our teams are now 37% higher than they were at the end of last year. So we've now got these aggressive new targets. Even though sales velocity has dropped, we're creating all of this new pipeline in anticipation. It's all going to be fine. We're going to hit our number. But we've got just 16% of our AEs now generating 83% of our revenue. Sounds a bit scary. So, rather than focusing on the 75% of reps that are missing quota, what I want to do for the rest of this presentation is think a lot more about the 25% that are exceeding quota. What are they doing differently? And I want us to think a lot about this quote at the top, one of my favorite quotes. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. So my view is, and as we jump into it and we start looking at the pipeline we created, what we're going to see is that the proportion of that pipeline, the amount of pipeline we created, while it grew by 25%, the amount of ICP pipeline didn't grow at all. So we're now just a whole lot busier and even less likely to hit our number. So what can we learn from the success of our top performers? What can we do differently now to give ourselves the best possible chance of winning as we move forward? So I mentioned before, this graphic is showing us the volume of pipeline we created. The volume of pipeline that we created in the first 6 months of this year has grown dramatically. And we know that our win rates are over 3 times higher when we're selling to ICP. But the volume of deals that represent ICP has remained relatively static. And that's the biggest challenge here. Just 18% of the pipeline now matches ICP. So we've got all of this inbound stuff coming through, we're working lots of deals, but we're being busy fools. We're not necessarily delivering. So qualifying deals is increasingly important. Now, we talked a lot last year about qualification methodologies, and that we saw a massive increase in number of businesses that were adopting some sort of methodology. You can see here, 90% more businesses are now using a structured methodology in the way that they're qualifying their customers. But the top performers are qualifying their customers much, much more than the B and C players in our organizations. They are over 3.5 times more likely to use that methodology consistently in the way that they're qualifying. So what we saw last year was a huge investment in training our sales teams as to what methodologies were. And for what it's worth, we didn't see a huge delta in the different types of methodologies. General rule of thumb, use whichever's easiest. The simpler the methodology, usually the better. But whichever methodology you've chosen to adopt, whether it's SPICed or MEDDIC or BANT, MEDPIC, it's very popular at the moment. The challenge isn't necessarily just training the sales teams on how to use them, but then getting that information recorded in the system of record is always a huge challenge. And we saw it last year. And it's one of those mistakes we keep making. We keep using the limited capacity for learning that our sales teams have to teach them how to do things that the AI can do better than they can. Instead of using that limited capacity for learning to teach them how to deal with objection handling, how to build the relationships with the right stakeholders, how to maintain momentum during that sales process. These are all things that the AI is going to struggle with. But when it comes to documenting how well we qualified our customers or logging the activity in the CRM, again, the AI can do all of that a whole lot better than the reps can. We saw over 2/3 of deals that pass the qualification stages are not qualified well enough. I think I bored Sam. So we need to do better at our qualification. We need to ask the difficult questions. There is no point working on opportunities that aren't real. And this inefficient discovery process is leading to a real poor value alignment and pipeline health. So a few takeaways from this graphic here. What we can see is those top performers are not afraid to close off those opportunities as lost a whole lot earlier in the sales process. While our lower performers, our B and C players, are waiting until much later in the sales process. They've invested all that time and energy, and they're only closing off the opportunities as lost much, much later in the sales process. They're very happy happy ears. The person I spoke to, lovely person. We got on really well, but I forgot to ask them if they had a budget, right? So helping them to understand how to qualify better, ask the right questions, and using AI to pick that information out of the calls and score how well the customer's been qualified, and using that score as a benchmark and a trigger to encourage the reps to beat that score next time has been a really good way of getting people to adopt these qualification methodologies. A whole lot easier than getting them to manually record everything inside Salesforce. So the low performers they're closing their deals off, 1/3 of their deals are being closed off as lost at that later stages, the proposal and negotiation stages, and it's a big challenge. The other challenge here is momentum during the sales process. By the time if we don't maintain momentum, by the time we get to that proposal stage, the solution that we're pitching isn't necessarily the solution that the customer needs. And we've lost that momentum, we've lost that alignment of our solution and their challenges. And we need to get much better at doing that. Now, what we've been looking at here is why deals are closed off as lost. And what we can see very clearly is that certainly over the last 2 quarters, there's been a big increase in lack of momentum and lack of engagement with the relevant decision makers on the reason why deals are closed off as lost. So we need to get better at engaging not just 1 or 2 key stakeholders, but the entire buying committee. And the challenge around low momentum is usually because we haven't met ICP. We're not talking to a business that actually matches the companies that we should be selling to. So when we compare that to the top performers, they are 2.5 times more likely to have that C-level, the whole C-suite engaged, or the relevant C-suite engaged, much, much earlier in the sales process. And as you can see, the top performers are 77% more likely to create pipeline that matches ICP. Now, one of the things we've got to be careful of is understanding the level of coverage each rep needs to hit quota. I know what we've seen a number of times is where, as leaders, we end up beating up the top performers because they haven't got quite as much coverage as everybody else. But they're closing 30% of their opportunities off as lost at that discovery stage. And we should be encouraging that rather than beating them up about the fact they haven't quite delivered. So we know that engaging the C-suite is important, but how important is really fascinating. And you can see by this heat graph, the level of engagement with the C-suite at the earlier stages for the top performers is absolutely key. And it increases sales velocity by over 9 times. So understand who your buyers are, who the entire buying committee is, which key stakeholders are important. And the short answer to that question is already in your data. Every deal you've closed, won, and lost in the last year, knowing which personas we engage with, scoring how much engagement you achieve with each of one of those personas at every stage of the sales process will help you understand what good looks like and give you a benchmark to use to help the sales team achieve their outcomes. Now, the number of stakeholders involved in the buying committee has continued to increase. If we exclude the enterprise deals, the mid-market and commercial deals, we've seen the number of stakeholders increase quite dramatically to get that deal over the line. And a special note here for Jen from Go Nimbly. We know that win rates are now 14% higher if we can get that senior finance persona engaged earlier in the sales process. Okay, so it's not just about getting the C-suite engaged. We need them engaged before we're presenting back the solution. And it's vital that the finance persona is now brought into the camp. We know they have a massive impact on decisions. And if we don't speak to them until we've presented back the solution, they won't feel like they're involved in that decision making. And you might find yourself in a place where they're pushing the deal right at the end of the process. Objections have also increased dramatically. So as we've analyzed more and more sales calls, we're looking at the types of objections that are being raised in the sales process. And what we can see is that the buyers are becoming more and more educated, and we kind of know that anyway. But if we can deal with the objections by the middle of the sales process, we are 3 times more likely to win the deals. So really get under the skin, not just of the whole buying committee. You know, if there's 9 stakeholders in the buying committee and you're only engaging with 3, I guarantee your competitors are engaging with the other 6. Even if they're going to be a detractor, get them involved. Understand what their objections are. And then really dig under the skin of what those objections are. Okay? Ask the questions time and again. Really get under the skin of what their challenges are. And you can see here, people are more interested than ever around ROI. Okay? They want to understand not just why the ROI that you're going to pitch them, but they want to hear stories. They want to hear stories of how other customers have overcome that specific challenge. How did they get the ROI that you're promising me? And those stories are so much more powerful. The top performers are telling stories all day long. While the B and C players, they're showing buttons and features. So let's get better at telling stories. And again, we can free up our top performers, we can free up our sales team by allowing the AI to do the heavy lifting and focus on training them on how to tell those stories on building that ROI. When we think about the impact, we talked earlier about slippage. Now, the key question is, does it even matter? Why does it matter if deals are slipping? And the answer is because we know that time kills all deals. And the only question you should be asking yourselves is by how much? How important is momentum in your specific sales process? And understanding the impact slippage has on win rates is material. Now, if it slips between 1 and 4 weeks, it's bad, but it's not terrible. Your win rate's going to drop by about 1/3. But once we get past that 4-week line, win rates drop by 2/3. And overall, we'll get to 83%, win rates drop by 83% if it goes past that point. So understanding the impact of time on your win rates will help you to liberate your sales team by helping them close deals off as lost sooner. We had a customer where we were able to go back through their historical deals and show them that once a deal had slipped past 12 weeks, their win rate was 0. 0. They still had over 120 deals in flight that had a slippage of over 12 weeks. So know your data. Understand the influence these data points are having. And let's get tighter at this stuff. So, how are we going to improve quota attainment? I'm going to summarize in kind of 5 key points here, and then we'll go on to some questions. But we want to understand what's driving ICP. Understand what ICP is driving the best outcomes. Again, the past data will tell you which personas, what geographies, what verticals does really make ICP. Getting strong on that, and then focusing the majority of the sales team's energy on that ICP is absolutely key to us hitting quota. Qualify, qualify, qualify. Okay? If you're not closing 30% of your opportunities off at that discovery stage, especially if you've got an inbound motion, you're spending far too much time on those deals. And the unintended consequences of that is they're not working on deals that should be closing. They're not focusing, they're distracting the solution engineers, the finance team, the legal team, security. All of that inefficiency, all of that time spent in deal inspection meetings, reviewing deals that aren't even deals. We need to get better at qualifying our deals. And AI can help us here. Set your criteria, put the prompts in, let the AI tell you how well the customer's been qualified. And if they've not been qualified well enough, don't let them leave discovery. Keep going back. When a rep gets that green thumbs up that they've qualified the customer well enough to lead discovery, they get a little badge, it's a big win for them. And they'll never want to do it the other way again. Understand what objections are being raised on your discovery calls, on your sales calls. And different personas are going to have different types of objections. The finance team are going to have specific questions around ROI. Your buyers, your leaders that you're selling to are going to have different objections to the users on the ground. How important are the users on the ground? Maybe they're vital. Maybe they don't matter at all. But understand what objections that they are likely to raise and start training your sales teams on how to address those objections. The top performers get those objections behind them much, much earlier in the sales cycle than everybody else. So understand and train around those personas and those objections will really help you to effective discovery. Build those genuine relationships with the C-suite. And don't forget about the finance persona. They become a vital part of that sales cycle now. There's no point ignoring it. Well, if we keep the deal value under a certain number, maybe they won't notice. Get their engagement, get their buy-in. The finance team want the same ROI everybody else does. And if you can get them bought into it, you're going to streamline through the latter stages of the sales process. And then reinforce that winning behavior and the AI workflows and data automation. We're in 2024. Now, even in 2024, relationships still drive revenue. And that's why we spend so much money on these sales resources. We expect them to go out and build those strong relationships with our prospects, with our partners, with our customers. But free them up to do what they do best. And in 2024, the AI can do all of the rest for them. The AI can fix all the dirty data in CRM. The AI can automatically log all the objections raised on calls. The AI can build your follow-up email with all the next actions agreed. It can fast-track all of that for you. And it can do it inside the CRM and the system of record. So let's focus our energies on taking the brakes off the sales team and encouraging them to focus on the things that they can do better than the AI. Well, thank you so much for listening to the content today. I hope you found it useful. You can download the H1 2024 update by scanning the QR code here today. Also, if any of the points we've raised sound relevant and pertinent to you and your business, you can come and meet with me. I'm here for the next 2 days. We've also got a booth outside, all the way to the right. I'm sure our team would love to meet you as well. You're also welcome to reach out to me via LinkedIn, as you can see there. I hope you've enjoyed the content, and happy to answer any specific questions if anyone's got any that they'd like to raise. Thank you very much.